Welcome into First Pitch American League preview. We're going through each and every American League team, giving a preview, going over their season win total bet, and hitting best bets at the end. Guys, if you want to check out the National League preview, check it out at WagerTalk YouTube. We just recorded it yesterday. Going over the panel here, we got Tony Finn, Bryan Leonard, and Dave Cokin. Find them all at WagerTalk.com. Guys, let's get right into it. Dave, starting off with you, we're going in ABC order. The American League East team, Baltimore Orioles, up first here. We're seeing a season win total of 63.5 right now. Of course, you can shop around, find it 63 and 64, depending what sports book you want to go off of here. But Baltimore Orioles, first up here, Dave. What are you thinking with the Orioles in 2021?
Well, it's not going to be good. It hasn't been good for some time, and not much has changed. Talk about the upside. Trey Mancini back in the lineup as the DH. Good to see him back in baseball after battling the illness. Austin Hayes, a nice prospect. Ryan Mountcastle's a decent prospect. John Means will be the top of the rotation, and he's actually pretty good. I think maybe an underrated guy. But there's just too many holes up and down this lineup. You got Freddie Galvis, Michael Franco. These are guys who they're just not everyday players. Couple of platoons that don't look particularly good. The starting rotation beyond Means, you got a couple of guys who still qualify basically as first-year players in Kramer and Zimmerman. Back in the rotation, Jorge Lopez, who's never really projected as a guy who can pitch at the big league level consistently, and Matt Harvey is in the rotation, which kind of tells you where this team is. And the other difficult thing for the team is they're stuck in the American League East, where Boston's going to be better than they were last year. You've got some powerhouses at the top with the Yankees, Rays, and a good young Blue Jays team. So it looks like a cinch they're going to finish last. And I think there's a good possibility there'll be another 100-loss season in the mix for the Orioles.
Good stuff, Dave. Starting it off. Guys, we're going to eat down the order of the American League teams in ABC order. One handicapper, one team. Next up here, Bryan, we got the Boston Red Sox. Looks like their season win total 80.5. So kind of surprising to see the Red Sox with under a 500 winning percentage in terms of their season win total. You think it's a buy low opportunity on the Sox here, Bryan?
Not really. There was something I didn't point out. None of us, I guess we just forgot to point it out. Because of the COVID situation, they're trying to get all 162 games in. Right. Keep in mind, a lot of these sports books have a limit. They say if you get to 156, it counts. So it makes it harder to play overs because you'd have to get more wins. Obviously, if you lose those 6 games, that's going to have an effect. So you're probably better off looking at the unders. And really, most guys that I know who bet totals for a living, they take a look at overs before unders before overs. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, this Boston team, very similar to last year. They're a very good offense. They've got some good players there. Have quality players, J.D. Martinez, Xander Bogaerts, Devers. Bobby Dalbec will probably be batting 9th, and he's a guy that is really been impressive so far. When we take a look at the guys in the minors, they've only got a couple of guys that will probably come up this year that have a chance to make any difference at all. That is a concern, and they've had some guys in the lineup that have had injury problems. The problem for Boston is the pitching. The back of the bullpen is not really settled. Barnes is a guy who has problems with walks. They did say now that the COVID situation was just basically he didn't have it. It was just a situation where it was he didn't have any of the symptoms, so he's back. But you've got injuries right now. You've already got from the starting standpoint, Rodriguez has got a sore arm or a tired arm already. Chris Sale will be back second half of the season. If you take a look at the guys they've got in the rotation right now, Eovaldi, he's got the talent, but he's never really done it as a starter. Pivetta, I don't trust. Tanner Houck was good last year, but he's not a major prospect. Garrett Richards has been back. When he comes back, he seems to get hurt all the time. And Martin Perez, who's a guy who, if you've got him in your starting rotation, you've got a bad starting rotation. So I prefer the under here for the Red Sox. I don't think they're out to win this year. Very similar to the Cubs. Just trying to get better for the future. But the under is probably the way I'd look in this game.
Bryan, good breakdown and great point in terms of betting season win totals. Is that across all sports books, or is that just a certain sports book that's putting out the 156 number? I think you said it was.
Well, I happened to stop into the South Point yesterday, and on their sheet it says you must play at least 156 regular season games. So, by watching the games, the preseason games, the spring training games, the announcers have talked about that. They said it's going to be a struggle to get 162 games in this year because they've tightened up the schedule much more. So it's the situation where if you got a team that's not going to be in playoff contention at the end of the year, they may just be a situation where they only play that 156.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And Dave, I see you shaking your head, man. Would that make you pretty much only look to the unders here, Dave?
Well, I generally I won't say only, but 3/4 of my baseball futures are on unders anyway, and that's the case this year too. So, as Bryan alluded to earlier, the sharper bettors tend to go under with Major League Baseball win totals. I know for me, I like to isolate the teams I think have no chance to be good, and play them under.
Okay, good stuff. Good nuggets here from Dave and Bryan. And last, but certainly not least, Mr. Tony Finn, WagerTalk.com. Tony, we got the Chicago White Sox up next. Looks like 91 for their season win total, depending where you're shopping here. And also want to bring you into the show. I know you weren't on the National League preview yesterday. So anything top of mind you want to throw out there baseball-wise, we'd love to hear it.
No, well, nothing. Nothing that would be probably earth-shaking or shattering or breaking news, for that matter. I mean, the Chicago White Sox are a good place to start. Really, I think I like this team. Among Major League Baseball teams last season, only 4 had an average batter age and an average pitching age of under 28. And this is according to Baseball Reference formula that weighs the offenses by games played, at bats, et cetera, et cetera. Pitching sides, games started, and even saves. Those 4 teams, San Diego, Pittsburgh, Detroit, and these Chicago White Sox. Of the 4, Padres and the White Sox are really the 2 teams with the hot air and that are climbing, rising. And for the purposes of preview, obviously, the Chicago White Sox. And you'll hear upside with this team. And upside is subjective. It's used by pundits and analysts far, far too often. In short, anything production-wise, success or improvement from last year, 2020, is welcome for this organization, mostly because those that measure success by wins and losses, and those who've attached themselves to this team over the last decade have suffered greatly. Considering this group went from, I think, 2012, 2020 without a winning season. The fan base watched 11 seasons without a postseason bracket slot. Last season's success was short-lived, but it was success. The Southsiders lost to Game 3, to the AL wildcard game, to the Oakland A's. If I'm not mistaken, that's correct. And Chicago finished, and this number's off the top of my head, 28.5, 29, 35, 16.5, 19, 17, and 30 games out of first place the previous 7 seasons to last year, which is significant, guys. The defense and the pitching staff surrendered 820 or more runs in the last 3 seasons before last season. They didn't score more than 710 runs since 2012. In short, to the gist of this, there are a large number of MLB projected batting orders that are really good coming into this 2021 season, and for good reason. Listen, pitching is only going to take you so far now, unless there's big changes made to the ball. And lineup 1 to 9, Tim Anderson, Eaton, Abreu, Makata, Grandal, Roberts, Collins, Vaughn, and hopefully Monreal, who had some surgery, I think shoulder surgery in the offseason, is projected to be there for starting lineup. Giolito, Geichel, Lynn, Chase, Rondon, and the only addition, really what I was concerned with more than anything, was the bench and bullpen upgrades for this team. And Hendricks is an upgrade. There's behind him, I think they could have had more, but for the most part, I like this team to win 91. I like this team. They're an overwhelming favorite to win the division. 91 games, I think, is a fair number. I expect Minnesota to regress again, as they did from 2019, and the rest of these AL Central bunch to be pedestrian or at least below 500. So over 91 games, like Chicago. Past the division, there's some question marks how they match up with the rest of the league, depending on who makes the postseason. But Chicago over 91 wins, I like. A lot of promise with this young team.
Okay, thanks, Tony. Dave, staying in the AL Central, we got possibly the pedestrian Cleveland Indians here, sitting at 81 and a half season win total. What are you thinking for the Indians this year, Dave?
Well, the starting pitching looks to be excellent. Bieber, Cy Young winner last year. Plesac, solid. Aaron Savali, I beg your pardon, is a good-looking pitcher. Logan Allen. Bullpen will be all right. I think Grinchik could be one of the better closers in the game this year. The question is, what are they going to get offensively? You got to fill Lindor's spot, and I actually like the guy that's stepping in there, and Andres Gimenez, who he's a good ball player. He's got some speed too. They need Ramirez to be consistent. I don't know if that's going to happen. Eddie Rosario was a good pickup from the Twins in the offseason. Look, it's not a bad-looking baseball team. The problem for them is they're not as good-looking as the White Sox are. They're not as good-looking as the Twins are. And so you kind of look at them as a team that's going to have to get there by the wild card if they're going to get there at all. I just don't know if they're good enough to do that. I think the depth is a little bit of an issue. And the big problem is if any of those pitchers take a step backwards this year, then you would think they have no chance at all because the offense just isn't good enough to carry them. So I think they're about a 500 team. I don't think they're a playoff team. But we'll see. I could be a little bit short on them. If the offense produces better than I think it might, then they'll be okay.
All right, Dave. Bryan, coming to you next. We're staying in the AL Central here. We got the Detroit Tigers, seeing them pinned at about 67 and a half wins. So might fit into that profile you were talking about of teams being under 500 here and not having to qualify for the full 162. Maybe looking under on the Detroit Tigers here, Bryan, although they did show glimpses last year. Kind of a surprising team at times.
Yeah, the Tigers play hard. They just don't have much talent. Dave touched on it. Minnesota's better. Chicago's much better. Kansas City is much better than they were last year. The only team in the division that's actually worse is the Cleveland Indians, and that's my hometown team. Detroit's one of those teams. Check back in 2023. Detroit will be good enough to compete. They've got a lot of good guys in the lower minors. Obviously, when you lose as much as the Tigers have been the last decade, and it's easy to pick up those draft choices and get some players, but they're rushing a couple guys this year, especially when you take a look in the rotation. Casey Mize made the rotation, and he's been much ballyhooed over the years, but he really has not, when he's taken that step up, he did not look good in preseason. Jose Urena brought over from Miami. He's just a fill-in. Julio Teheran is in your starting rotation. Very similar to what I said earlier about the player from Boston. Not a good thing when Teheran is in your starting rotation. Matthew Boyd's got the talent. Skubal's got the talent. Skubal's probably the best pitcher out of this group, young fireballer. But you take a look at what they've done offensively. They brought in free agents, Robbie Grossman, Nomar Mazara, and Wilson Ramos. Three decent players. They're probably bench players for many teams, but they'll be starting for Detroit, and it's probably a step up other than C.J. Cron, who left as a free agent, and he didn't play a lot last year. These guys are probably better than the people they had, but they're still not major league quality bats, and that's the problem with Detroit. They're going to play hard. They've got a quality management, and they know what they're doing. They're on their way there, but it's going to be a couple of years yet. So I'm looking to fade the Tigers at this point.
He's Bryan Leonard. Check him out, WagerTalk.com. Guys, since 2017, 186% MLB profit returned to his clients. So really producing with his clients' bankroll here in MLB. Check him out, WagerTalk.com. Also, we have a special with Bryan Leonard, 2-for-1 Bryan Leonard and Dwayne Bryant's MLB season. So you can check that out on his homepage, WagerTalk.com. Tony, coming to you next, heading to the AL West now. We're seeing the Houston Astros. Always an interesting handicap since everything that happened, just a couple years ago with the Houston Astros, and they kind of fell off last year, got hot at the end, but we're seeing them 87 and a half wins here in the AL West. What's your view on the Astros this season, Tony?
Well, there's 101 ways you can approach what to expect from this Astros squad. let's just put this. I'll put a preface that any preview I do, if we're going to base it on a 60-game sprint from last year, there's going to be question marks. At least, unless you're Nostradamus, I think some things are going to be uncertain, and there'll be surprises. But before I make any statement, also on the Astros, I'm one of those that was I was always high on the Astros. I thought this was one of the best, if not the best ever, as far as organizations go, and how they built clubs and how they built it from within. And obviously they stepped outside the box every once in a while, and I could mention those names. But this is a team that made the playoffs with a sub 500 record last year, guys. They proceeded all they did was take out the Minnesota Twins, the Oakland A's, and they were actually a game away from being in a series with the Dodgers that would have taken on a completely separate drama series, separate from the game in front of them at that time. Obviously losing to Tampa Bay in that decisive seventh game, erasing a 3-0 deficit in the process, put a bullet in any drama we would have had between what could have been or what would have been the Dodgers and their complaints about what Houston did, et cetera, et cetera. Let's assume, and this is probably a dream, let's just assume that Houston approaches this season with a clean slate, that there's not going to be a lot of animosity or a lot of pre-game stuff or during game stuff when Houston's playing the role of a visitor. There's no World Series hangover. There's no concerns about which pitchers they lost, although maybe there's many people I've talked to thinks Justin Verlander pitched 6 innings in one game before he set out the rest of the season, and that he may have been the difference maker on this Houston team actually being the team that faced the Dodgers as opposed to Tampa Bay. And that's just talk. But they're young, they're hungry, they're uber talented. Can they fly under the radar? A lot of people say this team's flying under the radar. I kind of like their win total. I think anyone who paid attention to this team, the organizational depth that was on display last year from Christian Javier to Urquidy to Valdez to Kyle Tucker. I mean, really, there's still a lot of talent here, and this won't be a team that wins over 300, wins 311 games over the next 3 seasons, full seasons like they have in the past before COVID 2020. But look at this lineup, guys. Altuve, Brantley, Bregman, Alvarez, Correa, this Kyle Tucker I just mentioned, the young Kyle Tucker, Gurriel, Miles Straw, and then Martin Maldonado. The rotations missing some players from past 3 years, but still Greinke, Javier, McCullers, Urquidy, and Luis Garcia, with Presley being the closer. Bullpen was an issue for this team last year, but I trust Houston more than I trust any other team in the West, more than I trust the A's, who I really like, always have liked, and like the way they do business, and especially the Angels. They just seem to continue to disappoint and to underperform. Second year under a new manager, some guys who have some proof, but my choice is the Houston Astros to win this division again and be a threat to be in the Fall Classic. I like them.
All right, Tony. Dave, heading to the AL Central here. We got the Kansas City Royals seeing their season win total at 74.5, 75, depending where you're shopping here. What are you thinking for the Royals in 2021, Dave?
Well, Bryan mentioned that he thinks they're improved, and I agree. That doesn't mean they're contenders, but this is a team they've got some really good minor leaguers on the way. And the big league squad isn't awful at this point. It's getting better. Now, that doesn't mean I think they're going to contend. But do I think they could possibly catch Cleveland and get third place in the division? Yeah. So I'm kind of looking at them as an over possibility. Now, I don't think I'll play them over, but I lean that way. Whit Merrifield is a stud. He hasn't shown any decline yet. He's 32, but his legs still appear to be as good as they've ever been. And he's a real catalyst at the top of the order. Mondesi also has a ton of speed. These are guys that when they get on base can create some real havoc. I'm not wild about the Carlos Santana pickup. He's 35 now, and I think you're going to get diminishing returns there. Hunter Dozier, not good defensively, and I don't like him at third base, but he can hit the ball a little bit. Soler is a good DH. Andrew Benintendi is a really interesting pickup for the Red Sox. This guy was a terrific hitter a couple of years ago, and he fell upon hard times and then basically didn't play last year. But Benintendi can still hit. Salvador Perez back behind the plate is one of the best defensive catchers in baseball, really knows how to handle pitchers. Michael Taylor gets a chance to play every day now. The rotation is interesting because I think Brad Keller is an under-the-radar guy who's not bad. And Brady Singer looks like he's got some potential. The other two, the veterans, Minor and Duffy, they're not too good. It sounds like I'm painting maybe a rosier picture than it ought to be for the Royals, but I think there's some good chemistry in this squad, and I think they're a possibility to get to maybe the mid-70s or maybe even 80 wins. So some improvement coming now for the Kansas City Royals.
Dave Cokin obviously knows his MLB, and it's proven at WagerTalk, #1 MLB handicapper in 2020. Guys, also side note here, #1 in NHL the last 2 seasons combined at WagerTalk. You can get both his MLB and NHL because when you buy his MLB package, guys, you get his NHL package on the house. So check it out, wagertalk.com, handicapper page. Dave Cokin, #1 in MLB just last year. Bryan, moving down the list here, we got the LA Angels in the AL West, 83.5, actually 84 wins. See them ticked up at some sports books now. Talking about the Angels in the AL West here, 84 season win total. What are you thinking for the Angels in 2021?
I want to just touch on the package with Dwayne Bryant. I release almost all sides. Dwayne Bryant releases almost all totals. That's why we package both of us together. So if you're looking for more plays, that's exactly what you want to do, is take a look at that. I'm not much of a totals guy. When it comes to the Angels, I've made a lot of money over the years just betting the Angels under for season wins. You're in a major market. You've got the most popular player in baseball in Mike Trout. Everybody loves him. Everybody wants the best for Mike Trout. They want Mike Trout to get to the playoffs. But this Angels team is weak once again. The best part of the Angels is the bullpen. They just signed, just overnight, they signed Steve Cishek and Tony Watson, the 2 best free agents out there in my regard for the bullpen. So they've done nice work in the bullpen. They brought Iglesias in from the Reds. So the bullpen is good. That's the best part. Problem with the rotation is they really only have 1 or 2 guys you could trust on. Dylan Bundy, Dave mentioned it last year, leaving Baltimore. He expected good things out of Bundy, and Bundy was great. Andrew Heaney is one of those guys that is good when he pitches, but he has injury problems. He's very consistent. Tani obviously gets hurt again yesterday, a blister situation in his hand. That's something you got to look out all season long for him. He seems to be injury prone. Anything can happen to him all season long. And when he plays, he's been terrific, batting and pitching. But he just cannot stay healthy. Then you've got Cobb, Canning, and Quintana is expected to be the other 3 guys in the starting rotation. Major injury concerns, and for Quintana, a guy who's at the end of his career. From a batting perspective, love the first 4 guys in the order: Fletcher, Ohtani, Trout, and Rendon. Then you've got Upton. Upton's a very good veteran player, but then take a look at the guys that got after that. Albert Pujols. They pay him so much money. He's a team leader, but he's got to be in the lineup too often. He's not capable of doing that anymore. Iglesias, better defender than he is on offense. Max Stassi, your normal backup catcher, is actually starting. He and Suzuki will be splitting. And Dexter Fowler, batting 9th, an outfielder. Anytime you got an outfielder batting 9th that doesn't have terrific speed, that's something to be concerned about. So I don't like the Angels. When you take a look at the minor leagues, they've got 2 minor leaguers. Obviously, everybody knows Adele, but they've got another guy down there in Turner who is very good. But those guys are not going to change the outlook for the Angels this year. I like the Angels under. It's probably my strongest under in the American League.
Yeah, and Bryan, you mentioned at the top there, not only you're in Dwayne Bryant's 2-for-1 package, which guys check it out at wagertalk.com, but the Angels have kind of habitually here, I want to say over the last half decade, nailed their season win total to the under, right, Bryan?
Yep. Yeah, they've been a team that's been popular, and like I said, they're playing in LA. They got a player that everybody wants to root for, but they just don't seem to get it done. And to be honest with you, and I hate to say it, but they may have to trade some of their better players here in order to get better in the future.
Yeah, no, that's a great profile of bet. You know, a lot of people like him, the smile, likable guy, but still, you got to get the wins there over their season win total cash.
Well, I want to chime in. I know we're
go ahead, Dave.
I want to chime in on something with the Angels. A couple of things. One, look, I know this is last year for Pujols, but he shouldn't be playing on an everyday basis, and they're going to do it. That's going to hurt them. They won't make up their mind with Ohtani. He's not a pitcher, okay? I know he throws hard, but you need him in the lineup for 150 games. Make him the DH, and that's it. The Angels don't do what's best for the Angels, and that has killed them in recent years, and it appears as though the mindset hasn't changed a bit. Would you agree with that, Bryan?
I agree 100%.
And Dave, what about Ohtani? I mean, you don't think he's a pitcher just because of
what
reason?
Make him a pitcher or a hitter. Take a pick, okay? This isn't college baseball where you can have two-way players. He's a pitcher or a hitter, and he's a better hitter than a pitcher, okay? He's just a better hitter than a pitcher. Make him the DH, maybe teach him to play the outfield, and have him in the lineup for 150 games. This is stupid what they're doing.
I like it, Dave. All right. Well, moving down the list here, Tony, I think you're up next. Correct me if I'm wrong. Minnesota Twins, we got 88.5 wins for their season win total. Have at it, Tony, with the Minnesota Twins.
I mentioned already in our last preview, and that offensive regression hit the Twins last year. And again, here we go again with this 2020 COVID season. I'll go into a little bit more maybe when I talk about Seattle later on in this preview session, and that the drop-off had to be expected. I mean, after all, this is a Twins team that set records for home runs, had the second highest slugging percentage of all time in 2019. Live baseball too as well. Again, that's another show all in itself. There was really only one way to go for this team, and that was a little bit south. They went from being a second in batting average, 18th last year in that sprint that we had, from 6th in on-base percentage to 20th. Slugging percentage was affected, on-base average, the weighted OBA to 15th. It really, there was a lot of things that came into play. Again, I expected it, and everyone that I think most of us here on this panel probably expected that after that great 2019 season. There's a lot of question marks around this organization. A lot of people, if you read like I read about baseball, from the GM to the pitching coaches, everything involved, this team has taken on an analytical approach, much like the A's and Billy Beane. And some people believe they've gone overboard. There's still a lot of people that scoff at those analytics, believe it or not. They don't like the fact that there's educated people in positions where they think there should be baseball people. But there's a lot to like about this Twins team, truthfully. But before I go into the lineup real quick, there's always going to be this. There's always going to be these questions. There's going to be the second guessing about who's in the front office. Is Baldelli? Was Baldelli? Is Johnson? All these questions. Josh Kalk. Again, Wes Johnson's being the pitching coach. So many questions. But until this team wins the playoff series, which they haven't won one since 2002, the questions will continue. They need to win. They need a series, and then a lot of the stuff will go away. They'll quit being second guess. But when you have Kepler, Donaldson, some of these guys are past their prime, but still productive. I mean, Donaldson, Cruz. Then there's Polanco, Sanyo, Garver, Buxton. If Buxton can stay healthy, this team's going to be a lot better. He's not at the top of the line. We're projected to be at the top of the line, guys. But we all know that if he stays healthy and he shows the kind of production he did in 19 and before, he could be back there. And then there's a good shortstop in Simmons, in my opinion. Rotation, I still have question marks about if this rotation can last for a full. Can they all pitch 30 games? Can they get 30 starts? Maeda, Berrios, definitely questions. Although I like him about Shoemaker. Pineda's good, and then there's the veteran in Happ, the left-hander Jay Happ. They go bullpen at least they go closer by committee, being Taylor Rogers and Comey, one being left-handed, one being right-handed, which has its advantages. I'm going to tell you that I still like the Chicago team, and I like them to a degree of over 91 wins. And if you like them over the 91 like I do, I would lean to this Twins game under their win total, and you can get at different numbers depending on your shop. But as much as I like them, as much as I think they're still a good club and they're going to be competitive every single day, as long as they're out there swinging away and pitching well. I like the under the season too much, and I like. And again, obviously, I don't like them to make the postseason a second straight year.
All right, Tony. Guys, reminder here, we got a coupon code first pitch 200. That's first pitch spelled out with 200 at the end, takes $200 off MLB full season package. You can get it for Tony Finn. You can get it for Dave Cokin, Bryan Leonard, any handicapper at WagerTalk or sportsmemo.com. $200 off using the coupon code first pitch 200 at checkout. Dave, next team up here. We got the New York Yankees. Talk about high season win totals here. The Yankees second only to the LA Dodgers, seeing 95.5 wins, 96 wins at some shops, heading back to the AL East. What are your thoughts on the Yankees for the 2021 season here, Dave?
Well, I wish I'd have requested a different batting order today, because I didn't get to talk about my team, which is the Red Sox, and now I've got to say nice things about the Yankees.
You don't have to, Dave.
Boy, they're awful good. LeMahieu has turned out to be anything but a Coors Field ball player. He's been better since he left. Gleyber Torres could be an MVP candidate. Gio Urshela, a guy who supposedly couldn't hit, was a good glove but couldn't hit. Well, he kind of broke that reputation apart. He's still a good defender and he can hit. Aaron Judge is a monster. Aaron Hicks doesn't hit for a high batting average, but he walks a ton of, and his on-base percentage is actually really good. So Hicks is a good ball player. Stanton, if he can stay in the lineup, scares the crap out of everybody. Clint Frazier's coming along. Really about the only weak spot right now, you got Jay Bruce, who you have to plug in because Voit is hurt. And, you know, Bruce isn't much. And Gary Sanchez is actually maybe the biggest liability on the team. He goes through some awful slumps. He's not a good catcher. And really, his hot streaks kind of skew his overall numbers because he'll get really hot for a couple of weeks, but he's not that good. But it's an enviable lineup. Let's put it that way. And you got Garrett Cole at the top of the rotation. And I think Herman, now that he's put his off-the-field problems behind him, is going to be a very good pitcher for this team. Montgomery's acceptable. The question marks are Kluber and Taillon. Don't know what Kluber's got left in the tank. And Jameson Taillon he's very talented, but can he stay healthy? Bullpen is outstanding. They're the best team in the division. Now, I don't think they're going to get to that win total because I think the division's tough and Tampa's really good. So I think they could be high 90s, but that's still going to get them in the playoffs. And at that point, they have as much chance to win as anybody. If they get hot at the right time, they'll be in the World Series. I hope I'm wrong on that, but that is what it is.
Dave, sorry, apologize for the rotation there, starting you off and you getting the Yankees. No, all good. I do actually have a handicapping question for you. I know a lot of people are interested in your opinion, myself being one of them, and it brings in the AL East into kind of this question of the change in the landscape, because the Toronto Blue Jays is going to be playing home games into Dundon, Florida, their spring training facility, at least to start the season. Yeah, I mispronounced it there. But either way, with it being 4 teams in the Northeast, let's just call it, and 1 team in the state of Florida, the landscape changed to now 2 being in Florida and 3 being in the Northeast. Do you think that is going to create more spot plays here throughout the season and maybe help the teams playing in Florida rather than maybe hurting them in the past?
I haven't the slightest idea. I will say this, that ballpark is hitter friendly and the wind blows out quite a bit in Dunedin. By the way, make sure the pronunciation, that's right there with Nevada. When you say Nevada out here, we get very upset. I know people in Dunedin, and they really get pissed off because that city gets mispronounced all the time. People call it Dunedin, Dunedin, whatever. It's Dunedin, and I have no idea how it's going to impact anything other than what I just said. You could see some really high-scoring games there. So check the wind in Toronto home games down there because you got some good offenses that are going to be playing a lot of baseball in that park.
Down in Dunedin in the state of Florida. Heading out west here, Bryan, we got the Oakland A's up next. Looks like 86.5 wins or 87 wins for their season win total here. What are you thinking for the Athletics in 2021, Bryan?
Dave hit on one of my pet peeves. pronouncing the state of Nevada wrong. George Bush came out years ago, and he's a president of the United States. He's got all these advisors, and he pronounced the name of the state wrong. How do you do that? How do you do that when you're in government? I don't understand. Anyway, let's get to the A's. Most people, when they're looking at the A's, they're going to say, "Oh, Liam Hendriks, the best reliever in baseball, he's gone. Marcus Semien, one of the best shortstops in baseball, he's gone." All Oakland does is rinse and repeat, very similar to the Cleveland Indians and the Minnesota Twins. Small market teams that continue to have great ownership, and they make the needed adjustments. They bring in Mitch Moreland. Dave's very familiar with him for Boston. He's a guy that is a good player that's always overlooked. They brought in Jed Lowry, who is now starting this season. Just go back 2 or 3 years ago when Jed Lowry was healthy. He was played like an all-star. Now, granted, he's 37 years old now. You're not going to get that same Jed Lowry. But for him to come back, and if he's healthy at all this year, that's a huge boost for this team. And as shortstop, they bring in Elvis Andrus. He's batting ninth. He's got 17 stolen bases projection for the ninth hitter in the lineup. That Elvis Andrus is a good ball player. So just don't look at Hendriks leaving and with Rosenthal they bring in as a 1-year signing. He's may not be quite as good, but when he's healthy, he's a very good closer. In fact, this bullpen for the A's has been so good for so long. Jake Diekman, Sergio Romo, Trevino, Petit. This team has got a lot of talent in the bullpen. You take a look at the batting order. These guys are quality players. Canna, who now is going to start most of the year. Laureano's terrific player. Matt Chapman and Olsen, not only great offensive players, great defensive players. Sean Murphy, a catcher. I mean, this is a team. You look down that order from 1 to 9. Stephen Pisciotti, when he's healthy, he's a good player. They've got a good everyday lineup, and if you take a look at their bench, I really like Kemp and Pinder. So they've got plenty of guys to fill in the spots. It all comes down to the rotation. Bassett came out of nowhere last year, very good year. He's going to be their number one, but really the number one is Jesus Luzardo. That guy has a chance to win the Cy Young this year. Manet is very good. Frankie Montas was terrific at the beginning of last year. I expect big things out of him. So the Oakland A's, when you take a look at the other teams in this division, Houston is the only other team they're going to compete with in this division. If you ask me, Texas is really bad this year. Seattle's got some nice players, but Seattle's years away. It'll be Houston and Oakland. I like the over. This is one of the few overs I like in season wins, and that's the Oakland A's.
All right, good stuff, Brian. Tony, heading to you next. AL West here. Seattle Mariners seeing them at 72.5, and Brian talked about hot out the gate. This Mariners team was good young talent. Seeing their season win total at 72.5, would you look over here for the Mariners, Tony?
I wouldn't look over here, although I there's a lot of things to like about what Seattle's doing or what they've done, to be honest with you guys. And I personally like teams like this because we go back to 2019. I think the three of us, or the four of us even, would agree that this team was just awful. Despite the fact that I think they started 13-2 that season. If you think about what they did after that 13-2 start, first 15 games, some I think were played in Japan. They were pretty miserable. This year's a little different. Again, last year, let me jump to last year. Last year they were only 2 games. Believe it or not, this Seattle team last year, I think, were only 2 games out of a playoff spot, 27-33 in that 60-game sprint, guys. It's a bit deceiving. If you look at the run differential, they were still minus 49, minus 50 in the run differential for a team is 27-33. If you like and follow and believe in the Pythagorean theorem of win-loss, maybe the base runs and some of the metric sites out there, they would say that the team was not 27-33. It's irrelevant. Again, I don't know what to do with last season as far as translating into this season's information other than probably just leave it alone. I think you just leave it alone, and there'll be some things that will eventually come out, or at least we can make theories on such. But this year, what do we say about a team that finally listen, there's nothing to expect, or nothing really. This team's not going to be mishandling contracts. There's nobody playing for a contract. There's nobody looking to bail. And sometimes the most dangerous teams are the ones that don't have anything to lose, especially in baseball. I don't expect Seattle to exceed expectations according to the bookmakers' numbers. And again, if you believe some teams overachieved and you want to use that last year's 60-game season, then I think Seattle's one of those that on the surface overachieved. Back in 2019, the Mariners need to use 67 different players over the course of the season. That's a lot, guys. They had 27, I think 27 or all 60 starts truly last year, included 27 from their 24-year-old trio: Sheffield, Justin Dunn, and Mr. Nick Marg. This team does what bad teams are supposed to do. They mess games up. They lose more than they win. And I expect the same thing this year. Listen, if I list for those who are weekend warriors who don't watch or don't live in the Seattle area, maybe they're not part of the AL West entourage or groupies that follow that. Other than Mitch Haniger, maybe there's Ty France, maybe other than Kyle Seager, guys like Evan White, Tom Murphy, Taylor Trammell, Dylan Moore, Jake Frawley, and then there's JP Crawford at shortstop. These guys are unknowns, and people that don't follow baseball like crazy like we do won't know them. The rotation of Marco Gonzalez, who you just never know what you're going to get from this guy. Really, truthfully, guys. The return of Jane Paxton. There's Flex, and then there's the youngsters, the Sheffields, Dunns, et cetera, Rafael Montero at the closer position. This is a team that I'm confident. I have no problems whatsoever playing under that 71. I like the fact that we have the Seattle team because we can make some money playing against them in certain situations and playing on them. But under 71 would be my play in team win totals.
All right, good stuff, Tony. Dave, heading back to the AL East here. We got the Tampa Bay Rays up next, seeing 85.5 as their season win total. What a season last year, Dave, in the shortened season, from making it all the way to the World Series. Randy Arozarena, 10 home runs in 20 postseason games. They got the #1 farm system. I like the Rays, Dave. What are you thinking this year?
I think this could be a year where they decline a bit for a couple of reasons. One is subtle, and that is that they are no longer the hunters who are under the radar. They're the hunted now. They're the defending American League champions who almost won the World Series. So everybody's going to be fired up to play Tampa Bay now. That's the subtle one. The second is more obvious. Blake Snell and Charlie Morton aren't there anymore. That's a huge hit. Huge. If you look at all 30 major league teams, I think you'll be hard-pressed to find any that took more of a starting rotation hit than the Tampa Bay Rays did. And that's going to put a lot of pressure on the bullpen. Look, no problems with Tyler Glasnow. He's dynamite. Ryan Yarbrough is now basically the #2 starter. He's a lot better as the #4 starter. Beyond that, you've got some serious question marks. Is Chris Archer going to be healthy again? And he was not good with the Pirates. Now he's back in Tampa. Maybe they can work some magic down there. Rich Hill, how many innings are you going to get out of Rich Hill? Michael Walker, to put it mildly, has struggled the last couple of years, and he's in their rotation now. I just don't see this team sneaking up on people as they've done. They've been brilliantly managed. I know Kevin Cash got a lot of criticism for the decision in the World Series, but overall he's been a great manager, and I don't think he's lost any. A heck of a bullpen, but that starting rotation to me is now a real worry, and for that reason, I'm going to decline some this year. I would not be surprised if it finished 3rd in the American League East.
Good points there, Dave. Pitching rotation especially. Moving here to the AL Central, Bryan. We got the Texas Rangers up next, seeing 67.5 wins. Talk about starting rotation. This one's not looking pretty for the Rangers this year, Bryan.
Yeah, Dave talked a little bit about Tampa Bay. I'm a little bit more bullish than Dave on Tampa Bay just because of what they've done in the past. The organization has found ways to win, and Cash is just a terrific manager. So I'm giving them a little bit of a benefit of the doubt. Can't do the same here with the Texas Rangers. There's probably nobody in this starting rotation most other teams would covet. Kyle Gibson is going to be your #1 starter. That tells you a lot. Your Hara coming over from Japan, we don't really know about him, but a lot of the starters, other than the one playing for San Diego right now, Yu Darvish, they have not really panned out. You got Lyles Boltonevich, who had a really good season, then he got hurt. Dane Dunning's not bad. I think he's got a decent future out of the rest of the guys out there, but they're not very good pitching wise. And when you take at this lineup, this is a team I'm actually looking to fade early in the season. But as the year goes on, when they start bringing up some of their minor leaguers, I think we're going to find value on Texas because they've got like 6 of their top 10 guys who are either ready this year or will be coming next year. And I like those guys for Texas. So if they can hold out a little bit and come in later on this season, if Texas is as bad as I think they're going to be in the first half of the season, I think we'll see a lot of good numbers to be able to take advantage of Texas in the second half of the season. 2 of the guys that I'm looking for bigger years out of, Joey Gallo and Ronald Guzman. Both guys have hit the ball harder now, and they're trying to go opposite field, trying to spread the ball around a little bit. Joey Gallo's been one of those guys that hits tremendous home runs. His fly ball arc is higher than anybody in baseball by like 8% over what an average guy shoots for. So he's like 30%. So he said this year he's trying to hit more line drives. Now he's so strong that he can hit home runs to any field just by swinging for line drives instead of trying to put the ball in the air. I expect a huge year out of Joey Gallo if he can stay healthy. His batting average is usually about 200. I expect him to hit about 240 this year, which would put him in the elite class for home run hitters. Ronald Guzman's a guy that's always had talent, but he's never been able to put it together. Now he's going opposite field. That will really help him because he's hit into a lot of shifts, and it's hurt him. And that's a major problem for myself is these guys that continue to hit into the shifts. And there's no way that baseball should outlaw the shift. You make changes defensively to make your team better and to stop the opposition. If a guy's too stupid, Mark Teixeira, if he cannot change the way he bats, he doesn't deserve to be in the league. That's my pet peeve in that regard. But David Dahl's a guy who has talent, but he's been hurt his entire life. This is a team, they've got a few spots, but Texas, for the most part, is a team I'm looking to avoid. And like I said, play against them early on, play on them as the season goes on.
Good stuff from Bryan Leonard. And guys, reminder, check them out at WagerTalk.com. Over the last 4 years, the most profitable handicapper at WagerTalk, up 186% bankroll increase here since 2017, talking about MLB with Bryan Leonard. And also remember, we got the 2-for-1 special where you get Bryan Leonard and Dwayne Bryant. You get that side and total combination with the 2 handicappers, a 2-for-1 special there. So check them out. Bryan Leonard and Dwayne Bryant, 2-for-1 there at WagerTalk.com. Next team up here, Tony, we got the Toronto Blue Jays to actually finish it off. And guys, we'll hit best bets at the end. We're seeing Toronto here, 87.5 for their season win total. And of course, with the change, the pandemic, where they're playing their home games, Tony, I'm sure it's going to factor in some way with your handicap. What are you thinking with the Blue Jays this season?
If you put some value or put some weight on teams that are willing to spend money in off seasons, I think you have to give Toronto some credit here. And again, what's to come after a season off, for the most part, at least a big chunk of the season off, it's going to be fun to watch, and it'll be fun to argue with these 2 guys or agree with these 2 guys for that matter on how it played in. Did it have an effect? Was it just in a season that was invisible? But this Toronto Blue Jays spent some money, and if you jump back to last season, I think it's fair that, or at least I think we should give Charlie Montoya some credit here and how he navigated that season that went from them having to play 13 games, the first 13 games on the road because Buffalo wasn't ready. I'm going to assume that everything's going to be proper and ready to go in Florida, as you guys already discussed, that they're going to be playing in Dunedin. I hope I pronounced that correctly, Dunedin, Florida. That, in truth, guys, this Buffalo, I remember the 3 of us talking about how it was hitter-friendly, and it was very hitter-friendly in Buffalo for the Blue Jays. They slashed at 276, 345, 478, whereas their opponents slashed 239, 309, 412. A big difference. that's how this small park and really that park in Buffalo was pretty average. They compared that to average Major League Baseball parks. It didn't play out that way initially, and we saw things that would probably dispute that, or at least would contradict some of the reports that we had, or at least I had. The offense improved last year. They really did. If you want to put any credence in that 60 game, it did improve. They have some young players. The pitching staff did not. And oddly enough, in this situation, their pitching staff enjoyed pitching in Buffalo where the opponents didn't. So how are we going to assess and evaluate Dunedin and what is going to be another funky season, at least initially, for this Toronto team? The additions of George Springer, Marcus Semien, they lengthen this lineup. They make it even better if you put some value on what they did offensively last year with the young players. But given that we really don't know much, and I'm not going to put a bunch on 2020 or 2019 for that matter, because these kids were young. But Biggio, Semien, Bichette, Hernandez, Vlad Jr., Gurriel, Tellez, Grichuk and Jansen, they're going to score some runs regardless of where they're going to be playing. I believe that. But and pitching only takes you so far, but it takes you somewhere. And I just can't buy into Rue, Steven Matz, Tanner Rourke, Ross Stripling, and Zook as their first five, and Romano as the closer. A lot of people optimistic, encouraged, believe that this team has tremendous upside. I think they're still a couple of years away. They've got to improve the pitching, and the young hitters have to mature. I'm going under season total for Toronto.
All right, liking the under for the Jays. Guys, we got best bets right now. We got to kind of book it around the horn here. So huge shout out to Tony Finn, Dave Cokin, Bryan Leonard, really bring it with these previews in the American League. Also Steve Merrill on yesterday's show in the National League. But going around the horn here, Dave, great breakdowns of these teams. Do you want to leave the watchers with a best bet or kind of final thoughts here?
Orioles under. I think they're a 100-loss team again. Maybe the future is getting a little brighter, but I don't think it's going to show this year. I expect them to finish well into last place in the American League East, which is a very good division. And all those games against that division are going to add up. Baltimore to win about 60. That leaves them under.
All right, Orioles under for Dave. Bryan Leonard, check him out, WagerTalk.com. The 2-for-1 special with Dwayne Bryan. Bryan, what are you thinking for kind of best bets and any final thoughts here?
Yeah, I'm going back with Old Faithful, just playing the Angels under. It's something that I've been able to make a lot of money on in the past, and I see no reason to change. And we may see some of their veterans get traded as the year goes on if they fall out of it. So, yeah, Angels under, and that's a recurring thing for me, and it's worked out really, really well.
Yeah, it's paid off in the past couple years. Riding it again here, fading the Angels, looking to the LA Angels towards the under. LA Angels of Anaheim, I believe. Anaheim Angels of LA. I'm not really sure on that, but the Angels to the under. Either way, it works. And last, not least, Tony Finn. Guys, remember the coupon code FIRSTPITCH200 works for all the handicappers at WagerTalk and Sports Memo. Tony being a great choice, as is Bryan and Dave Cokin. But Tony, you want to leave us here with a best bet and any final thoughts before opening day?
The final thoughts would be that I like both Bryan and Dave's picks. I'm also one of those that is under, typically under. I'll go contrary on this, and I'll be the difference. I'll be the different one in this segment. I'm going to play, again, as I mentioned, over the Chicago White Sox. And I'll do so with questions that are just crazy. I mean, can we trust Tony La Russa? Can we trust this Chicago? Can we trust that this pitching staff is going to stay healthy? And 91 wins doesn't seem like a lot in the big picture, but for this Chicago White Sox team and how they performed the last decade, it's a lot of wins. I really like what they have in front of them. I really like the fact that I'm not as high as some people and some of my peers on this division, but my best bet would be over the 91. Just take the Sox over the 91 and see it be a winner in the first 91 games of the season, right?
All right, Tony, good stuff. And a lot to Bryan's sentiment here, guys, in terms of season win totals. Just, looking towards the under because heck, if they don't play the full amount of games, obviously that's going to help the under to a certain point. Remember to read the fine print at the sports book you're betting with. But also to what Dave said, in the AL East, it being a really difficult division. Now, unfortunately, I think it's going to work against the Boston Red Sox as well. So seeing them at 80.5 wins, having to travel down to Florida against two of their teams, I think the landscape of the AL East and where they're playing their games could be a effect here for the Northeast teams. I'm going under for the Boston Red Sox, 80.5 wins for my best bet in the American League. But guys, great show, both NL and AL, getting you primed here for the MLB season. We're doing this each and every day, Monday through Friday on the WagerTalk YouTube channel. For Bryan, Leonard, Dave Cokin, and Tony Finn, I am Drew Martin. Best of luck with your bets. We'll be back tomorrow breaking down opening day. Come back and join us, guys.